This is from my childhood idol, Rocky Balboa. And this one's about life. He says, let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't always sunshine, and it ain't always rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are. It will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, ain't nobody gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Well, thankfully there is still some stuff in the basement. Rocky Balboa. Let's do this. Take up. Rocky Balboa stars Sylvester Stallone, Geraldine Hughes, Burt Young, Antonio Tarver, and is directed by Sylvester Stallone. What's up, guys? It's time to review the final Rocky review before Creed 2, which comes out next week, as of this recording. So Rocky Balboa is definitely one that was high on my must-review list. Rocky 5 was a tough one for me to review just because it's got some major problems with that movie. But still, I had a good time talking about it. But this is the one that I've really been looking forward to doing because there's a lot to discuss with Rocky Balboa, actually. I mean, it's a miracle that this movie even got made. You know, just to jump right into it, Stallone wanted to make this movie because of the failure of Rocky 5. As early as 1999, some 9 years after Rocky 5 came out, he wanted to, I guess, make the wrong things right, and Rocky Balboa was his answer to that. And originally, it did start out with Talia Shire, who plays Adrian. She was going to be in the role, but then Stallone was, you know, he kept racking his brain trying to figure out what's the best way to finish off the story. You know, and I think you want to do what the first movie does. You want to have emotion in there. You want to have heart. Because, I mean, let's face it, Rocky is all about heart. You know, as far as like sports movies and getting the feels, none of them do it better than Rocky. So to go out, you want to still maintain that emotional core. So what they ended up having to do was to, I hate to use the term, but kill off Adrian. And you know, he got the blessing from Talia Shire. You know, they went back and forth with this, and he said, this is going to be a movie where Adrian is at the core of it, but she, unfortunately, is going to be dead. How does Rocky pick up the pieces from that? You know, how does Rocky go on? And one thing I love about this movie is it puts Rocky alone, you know, just like in the first movie. And I think that's one reason why the first movie works so well, because I think we can all relate to just being alone, being loners, and trying to find our place in this world. Really, that's part of what the first Rocky's about, is this guy who is starting to get past his prime, trying to find his place in this world. You know, his ticket has almost been punched. No pun intended. So this is kind of another chapter of that story. This is a guy that his family is all but gone now. He has his son, which we're going to get into Rocky Jr., but, you know, that part of his life, it's not what it used to be. You know, Rocky Jr. has went on with his life. And so now it's just Rocky. You know, he's running a restaurant, but ultimately he's alone. Now, before we dive deep into this, I have some Rocky stuff, like, painted over my background here. Just today, I went to this vinyl store, and I picked up this Rocky vinyl soundtrack, and Rocky 4. And, you know, I threw it on and played it in the record player, and it was just such a cool experience. I mean, just look at that. How gorgeous is that, right? But also, if you go to the Drumdums store, you can get a Drumdums Rocky t-shirt designed by the great Woody Bowen. And he also designed one for Cody Leach in a Drago outfit that you can get at his store. So I'm promoting those while I'm doing the Rocky reviews. So hopefully mine will be in, because I ordered mine, and hopefully I'll have it in by the time I do the Creed 2 review. But first, quick plot synopsis. This takes place in the present day of this movie's airing, which is 2006. And Rocky has long since retired. He's running a restaurant. There is this like exhibition computer fight, which was really something based off of an exhibition that happened with Muhammad Ali and Rocky Marciano back in, I think, the 60s, late 60s, 70s. But one of these computer renditions is presented for Rocky versus the current champion, Mason the Lion Dixon. And so Rocky sees this and he starts, getting that fire back. The spark starts coming back, and he feels like, you know what, maybe I have one last fight in me. Maybe I have something that I want to prove to really myself ultimately. And it takes him a little while throughout the movie to figure out that he's really just doing it for himself. Is it vanity? Is it ego? Is it whatever? But ultimately, there is a big lesson that is in Rocky Balboa that's also in like a lot of the movies. There are themes that go throughout this series. And the theme of this one is, age ain't nothing but a number.
I think I want to, like, do something.
Like what?
Fight. Nothing big, small stuff, like locally.
Don't you think you're too, old?
Yeah, but you think you ought to stop trying things because you had a few too many birthdays? I do not.
If you have a heart in you, if you have a mind, then you are still capable of things that you didn't think you were. And that's what Rocky is presented with. He wants to prove that he can still, get back in the ring and really just to go the distance, just like he did in the first movie. I don't think he ever wanted to win throughout this movie. He just wanted to prove that, hey, I can still go toe-to-toe. And there are real life stories of this. George Foreman came back in his late 30s, after, I believe, like 10 years.
Right hand landed there, and an up. And a right and a left, and suddenly Gore stopped punching, and it's Foreman's initiative.
Big right hand. That's the best right hand of the fight. Is
Down
that?
goes Gore on a right hand. An unbelievably close-in right hand shot.
And he ended up beating Michael Moore. So, that was kind of the inspiration of this movie. But really, the reason that Stallone did this is because of the failure of Rocky V, and he just wanted to go out on a high note. Now, I love the way that this movie just pays tribute to Adrian. That opening scene, or at the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where Rocky, he's kind of going on an anniversary date with Adrian. He's going back to all those landmarks of his past that, he spent with her, that he first met her. You got the ice rink, which is pretty much just, demolished, and it's just a dirt mound. He goes back to the apartment that he lived in the first movie. All these memories, and it just brings us all back to that. And it really settles us in for what type of movie this is going to be. This is pretty much a character study, again, thankfully, of who Rocky is, just at a different point in his life. And there are so many scenes throughout this movie where I just want to tear up. There's the one scene where Rocky is talking to Paulie and, telling Paulie how he didn't think it was going to be this hard. And, he just breaks down and starts crying.
She didn't leave, Paul. She died.
Okay.
Sometimes it's hard to breathe. I feel like there's beast inside me.
It's okay, Rocco.
I think the biggest thing about this is that we feel like we know Rocky. He feels like a family member. And it's like watching a family member break down and cry in front of you. And you just get emotional watching it. That's, if anything, Rocky Balboa really brings back the emotion like full force. Also, there's this strained relationship between Rocky Jr., Robert, and Rocky throughout this movie. Throughout the first portion of the movie, I'd say the first half, Rocky doesn't really know how to confront his son, how to deal with him. You can tell that there's this wall that's between them because Rocky Jr. has been living in Rocky's shadow all these years, and he is having a tough time dealing with this. And there's a point in the movie where Rocky's just like, you know what, enough. Eventually, you're going to have to stand up and be your own man. And everybody has circumstances in life that they have no control over. Rocky couldn't help it that he became a famous boxer. Rocky couldn't help it that everybody in the world loved him. And, you know, he had a son, he had a family. Adrian knew how to deal with it.
But you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow.
Rocky Jr. should learn how to deal with it, and that was his message. And then when you get that the world ain't all sunshines and rainbows.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
That very famous speech that's probably been used in a lot of retirements throughout the years. I used that speech in my retirement from the military, and I'm not gonna lie, I started crying. But it's just such a powerful speech, and there's just so much meaning behind it, you know. And I think the best speeches are the ones that are universal, the ones that we can kind of grab onto and apply to our own lives. And that speech was just perfect. But more importantly, it was a great moment too, because it caused Rocky Jr. to finally come to his senses and say, you know what? I'm in charge of my own life. I have to deal with this. I have to figure out a way to live in my father's shadow. Also, this movie is just filled with great moments throughout. You know, I think the first movie has all these great moments because a few of these movies, there's not that much action in them. This is one of those movies. If you're looking for a Rocky 3, Rocky 4 style Rocky movie, you're not going to get it with Rocky Balboa. You know, there's no action until the end of the movie. But fortunately, there are so many great character moments throughout. You know, all the way from when Rocky goes and gets Punchy the dog with steps. The moment where he first meets little Marie at the bar and you know, he defends her. Really, just even the dialogue of Rocky as a character is just so infectious throughout this. And that's a good point too, because in Rocky 5, I think Stallone overdid it with his delivery of the character. In this one, he settles back into it very nicely. In Rocky 5, he really seemed off. He took it way too far. This one, you can tell that Rocky's not the smartest guy in the world, but he's still street smart. He's still, you know, wise. And I don't think that was portrayed as much in Rocky 5. And then you got Spider Rico, who was in the very first movie, who Rocky fought at the beginning. Loved, you know, those little moments like that in this. That was great. And I have to talk about Burt Young, Paulie. This was the last movie that Paulie was in. It might be one of my favorites with Paulie because there's that scene at the beginning where Rocky's at the skating rink. And Rocky's loving this. You know, he's spending this time honoring his wife, and Paulie is just a basket case throughout this whole thing. And you know, he breaks down and tells Rocky that, you know, you were good to Adrian, but I was always mean to her. So since she died, I have all these regrets, and I'm having to deal with this in my life. You know, there's so many things that I wanted to say to her that now I can't. And I thought his performance throughout this movie was just beautiful.
What's the matter with you, Paulie?
You're living backwards, Rocco. Change the channel from yesterday. Yesterday wasn't so great.
It was to me.
Not to me. You treated her good. You had the good times. I treated her bad. I don't have to think about this.
Paulie is one of the most underrated characters, I think, in cinema history. I think if you didn't have Paulie in the Rocky movies, there would be a gigantic void. You know, I think Paulie is kind of the yin to Rocky's yang. They play off of each other so well. And I love that everybody hates Paulie in this movie just because he's just a mean son of a bitch.
Excuse me. Deliveries are in the back.
I'm not a delivery guy.
Well, do you have a reservation?
Do I look like a freaking Indian?
And Rocky loves him to death. I mean, hell, that's the reason him and Tommy Gunn got into a fight, because Tommy punched Paulie. Rocky gets Paulie. Paulie gets Rocky. They have a very push and pull relationship with each other, but ultimately they love each other immensely. And I love that in Creed, he still has, you know, Paulie's room there. You know, he's still got that kind of shrine of Paulie. And I hope they do something like that for Paulie in Creed 2. Now, Antonio Tarver plays Mason the Lion Dixon. He was a real light heavyweight boxer at the time. And I think this was an interesting choice for an opponent, because this is a boxer that's still young in his career. He hasn't really proven himself yet. Yes, he's the champion, but in the current climate of boxing, there just aren't too many worthy opponents. And so that's kind of the point of Rocky Balboa. Rocky is really the worthy opponent, the guy that actually will go the distance. If you knock him down, he's going to get back up. And really, he was what Mason needed at this point in his life. I like that they focused a little bit on the opponent, and they didn't make him like a straight up villain. And this was kind of like the approach that Apollo Creed was. Apollo Creed was not a villain. He was just a very worthy opponent, very dangerous opponent. Mason the Lion Dixon still had a lot to learn. And I think he, as a character, learned something about himself throughout this movie. Baptism under fire. I love that line in this. And I do love that exchange between him and Rocky near the end where, you know, Rocky asks him, "Are you scared?" And he says, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "It's good to be scared." I think you get the best out of people when they're scared. And I truly believe that. Hell, every time I get in front of this camera, there's that fear there. I can't just jump right in front of it, you know. But once I finally do, it's that fear that keeps me going. Now, luckily, two things that are back in this movie is the training montage and the final fight in the ring. And both of them are pretty damn worthy. And one great thing is Tony Burton returns as Duke. And this would be his final Rocky film because he passed away a few years ago. But it was so nice to have him in this movie. And that little speech, you know, that little pep talk that he gives Rocky before the training begins.
So what we'll be calling on is good old-fashioned blunt force trauma, horsepower, heavy-duty cast iron pile-driving punches that will have to hurt so much they'll rattle his ancestors. Every time you hit him with his shot, it's got to feel like he tried kissing the express train. Yeah, let's start building some hurting bombs.
If that speech doesn't get you pumped up before working out, then nothing will. Now, the final fight's really interesting too because they actually filmed this in Las Vegas right after a real pay-per-view fight. And the reason being is because Stallone could not find a venue that was available. All of them were booked up. Otherwise, we would have had a final fight, I guess much like the first 4 movies, which I probably would have preferred. I think that is one of my only cons about this movie. I still enjoyed the final fight, but I don't think it compares to the first 4. It serves its purpose because it's there to show that, hey, Rocky still has the fight in him.
This morning.
Rocky misses. There's a meat-seeking missile on the point of the chin by the jab. 4 pinpoint jabs by Dixon. And there's a hard right hand.
And it gets that point across. Even the punches sound different in this because they wanted to use real punching sounds. But I guess cinematically, you want things to be bigger than life. And I think those first 4 movies, like Rocky 2 and Rocky 4, those final fights, I don't think anything will ever touch those fights because they're just amazing. But this does have some nice intensity to it. And I do like that, you know, Rocky didn't win the fight. Even though they filmed a version where Rocky does win, I think that would have been a mistake. Because if Rocky wins, then where do you go from there? You know, he just really wanted to go the distance because that was the purpose of the first movie. But overall, guys, Rocky Balboa is a very worthy final movie before we get to Creed. It does a lot of things right. Ultimately, the character moments between Rocky and the rest of the cast, they just feel much more natural in this movie. And some of the best character moments actually out of the whole franchise. And structurally, I think this movie works so well. That was one of my biggest problems with Rocky V is because it was just kind of all over the place tone-wise. Whereas this movie, it had a nice flow to it. So overall, I'm going to give this a purchase worthy. Rocky Balboa is a worthy final movie in the franchise, I will say. So post in the comments your thoughts on Rocky Balboa. Looking forward to hearing them. And look for that Creed 2 review coming next week. So looking forward to it. Anyway, guys, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and now Stardust. If you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.